decent damage. Ow. Alright, one down. And then we're gonna heal again. You know, we were talking, I think, when we started this series about, you know, how this is supposed to kind of replace season 4 of the TV show and then incorporate portions of the manga that were not in the show itself into this, and how, like, when this whole thing started, I was like, oh, you know, I'm not really digging the TV series version of season 4, so maybe this will be better. And I've read the manga version of season 4, which I think is a lot better, especially compared to the TV version of it, which I still haven't necessarily finished. But, you know, studying the manga for school and everything, I think kind of shed a better light on that arc than I had originally seen it, compared, you know, just seeing the early 90s TV version of it. So I don't necessarily know how I feel about this anymore, I think is the main thing I'm saying. Because, I mean, I think the story is interesting still, but I'm not 100% sold on it, like, as I was prior to reading the manga. Which also, I wrote a 20-page paper about the Sailor Moon manga for school, which is kind of crazy. Actually, it was like 18 pages. Well, 20 pages was the page limit, but sometimes you gotta embellish. But, yeah. Surprisingly, that went over really well. Like, I got an A- on it, and I got an A on my presentation over the paper, so... And that was for a 400 level class, so... Hey, I'll humble brag the hell out of that. And then one of my friends who's getting a doctorate said it was a good paper too, so... Double thumbs up. And they say you can't study stuff you like in school. I mean, they probably don't say that, but... Stuff like manga. Study in school and have it go towards your major. I'll probably write about like that whole experience and maybe just like some of my papers, synopsis and all that stuff for the website seasonalanimeCheckup.com at some point, but that's neither here nor now. Did we just do a giant loop? Because if so, that's a bummer. Because we didn't even find anything. I mean, we're getting good experience off of battling these guys, at least. Nice. But really, like, if you think about it, like, Sailor Moon is like a really good way to look at like something like a graphic novel or manga in a capital L literature style sense. As I now try to figure out where the hell I'm going. I think I just made a huge loop. I think that whole thing is just a loop. But just like the way it challenges like social issues, especially in Japan, you know. If you've ever studied anything about Japan, you know, like that women are basically at a lower tier than men in that society, and basically this whole story basically is just like fuck you to all of that. And then you have the issues of like gender roles and like LGBTA issues as well, of like when you introduce like Haruka and Michiru into the story in Arc 3, and then you could have the whole argument about, you know, what the fuck is Haruka? Is she just a way to showcase that women can take masculine stereotypes and use them for their own benefit, or is she transgender? Is she non-binary? There's a lot of arguments you can make for that, trust me. I made them in my paper. And also just the whole way that, you know, this franchise changed the way that, you know, saying the wrong thing. The Mahou Shoujo genre was at the time, because, you know, prior to Sailor Moon coming around and revitalizing it, it was basically just a dump for fan service, essentially. Because, you know, it started off in the 60s. I don't know. Okay, maybe you don't know. But it started off in the 60s because they basically saw Bewitched, the American sitcom, and saw that and were like, oh, that's cool. Let's take that and make that a new genre in manga. So they did that, and then it ran successfully throughout the 60s as a viable genre for the medium. And then, like, once in the 70s, it started to dip, and then back in the 80s, they basically tried to pander to the otaku style of fans and all that stuff. So that's where they introduced, like, fan service and all that bullshit into the genre. And then Sailor Moon comes along, takes from the Sentai genre. So they're like, we're just gonna make this whole team. They'll all be magical girls. Throw that out there. It's just a fucking wild success. And then, you know, that leads to bigger hits in the genre. You know, has like Cardcaptor Sakura is obviously influenced by Sailor Moon. It was another big hit in the late 90s, early 2000s. You could also say, you know, Pila Madoka Magica is also directly influenced by Sailor Moon, except that's a deconstruction of the Mahou Shoujo genre. I'm really just giving you my presentation for school now, but I think it's super interesting. And then even if you look at Americanized magical girl shows, or just westernized in general, like look at Powerpuff Girls, you could say that's directly influenced from Sailor Moon, because it's another team up of magical girls going off and fighting and doing all that stuff. Miraculous Ladybug, that new show, which I think is French in origin, that's totally influenced by Sailor Moon. I mean, you could literally say, like, that main character, actually the two main characters are just like a newer version of Sailor Moon and Tuxedo Mask. Which I totally should have used that example in my paper, but I just completely didn't. But a friend of mine has been talking up that show a lot lately, so, and it's a good parallel to that whole influentialness of Sailor Moon. And this is just a good way to talk while, you know, we're just grinding here, trying to get out of this cave. But also, I mean, this franchise had just such a huge influence on just anime and manga in the United States as well. Just, I don't know how many of you, like, know when the Sailor Moon anime was originally localized with that Deke dub, which is pretty infamous now for being so... It's very 90s, and, you know, they Americanized pretty much everyone's names and all that stuff. That ran in 95, I want to say, is what my research told me. And then subsequently got canceled pretty quickly. Like, I would say, like, the audience for anime at that time just wasn't there. Am I just going backwards? I think I'm just going completely backwards. If I end up out of this cave, then I'll pretty much be telling. But yeah, like, the show came to America and just didn't really hit, because obviously people watching anime in the States just wasn't there at the time. I mean, this is before Pokemon even, you know, hit the scene, and that's really what kind of was the launching pad for anime in the United States, and that led to Toonami and all that stuff. And obviously Sailor Moon would be a part of that, but this was, you know, 3 to 4 years before that. I think I'm about to exit the cave. But after, you know, the show got canceled, like, oh no, this is gonna be a slow battle. So I have a little bit more time to talk. But after the show got canceled, one of the American manga providers basically was like, we need to find a different genre of manga to bring to the States that's not, you know, just a typical shonen boys manga. Because that was basically what was dominating the marketplace at the time, which is still a growing marketplace. So, oh fuck, I forget the name of the company that eventually brought it over here, which I think they eventually turned to Tokyo Pop. I don't remember if that's 100% true, but they got the rights to Sailor Moon because the Japanese publisher for it basically I think was non-existent in America at the time, and they just didn't really care to bring it over themselves. So this American company brings it over. Oh my god, this encounter rate is ridiculous. It basically just takes a chance on it. It's just like, all right, maybe this will succeed, maybe it won't. I mean, the anime got canceled already, so maybe this will work. And then eventually, just like it became the launching pad for like women and girls manga in America. And then through one of my research, or one of my sources, basically was like, you know, women have been polled and basically said, oh, Sailor Moon was pretty much what got me into anime and manga. But the weird thing about the American deal for Sailor Moon originally was that I believe in the publisher's magazine they started off with the first arc, which I mean, manga at the time was still real weird because they westernized it, so it would be read from left to right instead of right to left, and then they used the Americanized names that was in the anime to kind of bridge the connection between those two. So if you had seen the anime at the time, you'd be familiar with the characters. So they did like the first arc in like this magazine, and then they also we came back out the wrong way. That's my bad. But they also began to like serialize, I think, the third arc as well, like at the exact same time, which is real strange. Because if you read both at the same time, you'd be like, what's going on? But thanks to that manga basically blowing up in the States as it did, it led to the anime getting like re-picked up in syndication by the USA Network of all places. And that was in 97, or maybe it was 98. Like 97, I think it was the manga came out, and then 98 was when it got re-picked up in the syndication. And you could also pretty much draw a direct correlation between that and it getting picked up by Cartoon Network for the Toonami brand, which launched in 98. But in 98, it wasn't the anime focus as it was. I think it was like still, it may have been Sailor Moon and some other Western shows. And then by 99, it becomes, you know, Dragon Ball Z, Gundam Wing, Sailor Moon, and then some other show. I could probably remember it if I saw some lineups and stuff, but that's when basically, you know, anime became like this huge launch pad and just became so huge in the States in late 99 and early 2000. Which obviously, I mean, you can thank Pokemon for that, because Pokemon blew the fuck up over here, and the anime also blew the fuck up over here.